Hey, everybody. Welcome back to For the Booze.
For the booze.
For the Booze.
For the booze.
The Booze.
Welcome back.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Good? Yeah? No?
Me?
Okay.
Anything new? Let me guess. I'm going to use my psychic powers and say no.
No. Is correct.
I know lots of stuff going on. I'm just not going to talk about it here. But, yeah, I think we've got kind of a big one this week.
I think we do, too.
And we had it sent in by an ex-guest / listener. I think they listen.
I think so, too.
Maybe.
But, yes, they were previously on the show.
They were. They were the second investigation group we had on.
Yes.
RKB Paranormal sent in a request, but before we get to that, in light of the many deaths surrounding this, we have a story that was sent in. I mean, it pertains to it in the deaths way.
The death part.
That's about it. But he was such a good storyteller. We had Vic Ferrari, Mr. NYPD detective himself, send us in another fun story. And don't forget, guys, he's an author who writes a series of books where he tells different stories, but he changes some of the stuff in there. So, because I think he says he doesn't want to get anybody in trouble,
right? No,
but they're all true stories, and they're very funny.
Wow,
it's hilarious. So, we're gonna let him take it away and start us off this week, and it goes out to you, Mr. Vic Ferrari.
Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and on this week's episode of For the Booze podcast, I'd like to tell a story about a homicide I walked into. It was the early 90s on a Saturday night. My partner and I were just coming off on meal hour about 9 o'clock at night when a female cop working the telephone switchboard handed us a sheet of paper. She told us that there was possibly a cardiac in a building on the other end of the precinct. So my partner and I rushed over, jumped out of our radio car, started climbing the stairs, and we heard yelling and screaming as we walked up into the hallway. The apartment was filled. There was grieving people yelling and screaming and crying. We kind of pushed through the rows of people to get to the kitchen area. Once we reached the kitchen, there was a female laid out on the floor, covered in blood. She had been stabbed to death multiple times. Laying on top of her was her grieving son. I had to pull the young man off his mother and have him sit in the next room. She had been stabbed multiple times, and there was blood all over the kitchen. The blood was dry and a rust color, a brown. You know, when you first cut yourself, blood is bright red, but over time, when it hits oxygen, it turns a darker color, which meant that she had been there for quite some time. The apartment had been ransacked, so I tried to make sense of this, and I began asking her son some simple questions. Where do you live? I asked him. He goes, where do I live? I said, yeah. In this apartment. I said, okay, when was the last time you saw your mother? When was the last time I saw my mother? So every time I asked this guy a question, he repeated my question, which to me meant he was buying time. He started getting incredibly weird as I began asking him questions. Then as I started looking around the ransacked apartment, things didn't make sense. A lot of the drawers were pulled out and dumped over and then placed right back into the dressers. The woman's handbag was dumped upside down and then placed right side up, and there was money and credit cards. So it appeared to me that the burglary had been staged. The detectives came and they brought him to the precinct while we processed the crime scene. So they began asking him questions, and he really wasn't becoming forthcoming. He started clamming up. The deceased had several brothers that lived in the next building, and they wanted to know what was going on, and the detectives told them that their nephew really wasn't forthcoming. So they decided, he didn't ask for a lawyer, so they decided the next day they would make another run at him. So in the NYPD, the first cop on the scene that finds a dead body has to go to the morgue the next day to identify them. So I was exhausted. I was up all night. I go to the morgue the next day, and some young guy says, what's the deceased name? I tell him the deceased name. He goes into a large refrigerated room. He rolls out a body with a sheet over it, and he pulls off the sheet. I go, I'm looking for a Hispanic woman. This is a black guy with a beard. He goes, oh, sorry. Puts the sheet back over the poor deceased black guy and wheels him back into the room. 5 seconds later, he wheels out another body and pulls a sheet off, and it's a homeless Hispanic man. I said, listen, pal, I didn't come here to see every person that died in the Bronx last night. Let me in. So I walked into the large refrigerator room. It had the worst odor I'd ever smelled in my life. There must have been about 10 dead people in there. I immediately recognized the woman, and I identified her. Meanwhile, at the precinct, the detectives the next morning went to visit the son to see if they could get an answer out of him and what happened to his mother. When they reached the hallway of the building to interview him again, what they found was her three brothers, the uncles that were asking questions the day before, were grilling their nephew in the hallway. The detective stood back while finally the son admitted that he, in fact, had stabbed his mother. The story went like this. He was smoking crack. The mother was done with him stealing from her and using drugs. She told him to leave. He became angry. He picked up a kitchen carving knife and stabbed his mother to death in the kitchen. Then what he did was he took his bloody clothes and knife and put it in a plastic bag. And what he did was he left the door ajar, hoping someone would find his mother while he got rid of the murder weapon and his bloody clothes. He returned several hours later. The door was still ajar. So he went through the process of calling the precinct and calling his uncles and then trying to make it look as if he had stumbled upon his deceased mother. Last I checked, he's still in jail, and this is from about 1994. So be sure to check out my new book, The NYPD's Flying Circus, Cops, Crime, and Chaos.
Jeez.
Oh my goodness! Wow,
As always, Vic.
Yes.
Look, I love the way that man tells a story.
I know, it's so good. I'm always like enthralled when he's speaking.
Are you kidding me though? How many bodies were they going to bring out to him and play the let's make a deal?
Okay, and was the description of the smell of the freezer really necessary?
Yeah, it was. You gotta take it all in all the senses.
Well, and I really do hope that guy is still locked up because that is
it's pretty brutal.
crazy.
I don't care how mad you are at somebody in your family or cracked out. You just don't do that. But thanks, Vic. We love the stories.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure the listeners love the stories.
Thank you.
Keep sending them to us, man. And maybe you'll be hearing more from him. I kind of have an idea cooked up in my head. Maybe have him on more often.
Oh.
So we'll see what happens. We'll move forward with that. But so we had a listener suggestion come through the airwaves to us from RKB Paranormal, and it was a place that they investigated, and I'm pretty sure they said it's like their favorite place.
Yeah. When they were on the interview with us, they were talking about certain stories and stuff that they had from this specific place.
They were smitten by it.
Yes, and I myself, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I had never heard of this place.
I never heard of it either.
And so we decided we were definitely going to be doing this. So
For sure.
Today we are going to be doing Octagon Hall.
Octagon Hall.
Spooky.
So, without further ado, let's get into Octagon Hall.
Let's do it.
Now, before we get started, as always, I'd like to shout out a few websites that I used for all my information today. The great and powerful Wikipedia.com. A site called SAH-Archipedia.com. I think I'm saying that right. OctagonHallMuseum.com, AngelFire.com, and RoadTrippers.com. I used a lot of sources for this one.
Nice. Yeah.
Unfortunately, not one was put together in a way that I liked, so I had to piece it all together.
Usually my ending
Yes.
for all of mine.
Now, here's an overview in the history of how the Octagon House is described in the modern culture of the time. It's kind of an overview of the house itself and why it was a house. And this was an article that I came across from SAHArchipedia.com. Octagon Hall is an 8-sided house in Simpson County, Kentucky, near Franklin, Kentucky, completed around 1860. And it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1980, the Lord's year in which legends were born. Mm-hmm. Me. It has also been known as the Andrew Jackson Caldwell House after the man who built the house. And there is a second contributing building on the property. It's a detached summer kitchen. When Orson Squire Fowler published, it's called The Octagon House, A Home for All, in 1848, he started a craze that swept the nation. Octagon Hall in Franklin is one of 2 octagonal houses that survived in Kentucky. Andrew Jackson Caldwell and his wife Harriet Morton Caldwell owned several 100-acre farmland when they decided to build a house on the Nashville Road, as U.S. Route 31 West was then known. So I guess it's I guess that's what the 31 West used to be called.
Yeah.
Was Nashville Road.
Well, because I know over time, like roads change names and stuff. So
well, it depends. The city does stuff.
Yeah.
The county, whatever. I bet there's still people there that call it Nashville Road.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
because it's like in the sticks or something.
for sure.
Fowler provided very few plans in his 1840 book and encouraged the homeowner to build to suit his needs. At the same time, Fowler argued that beauty and utility were closely united and that ornament was unnecessary and even ridiculous. I feel like you want to say something.
No.
As a girl who likes to buy knick-knacky stuff for your house, I thought you'd have something to say there. The home builder's concern should be for strength and tightness of joints, dryness and ventilation, light and cleanliness. So basically like a functionality purpose home.
Right.
With none of the accoutrements of modern day.
Accoutrement.
Yes, accoutrement. The house measures 13 foot 4 inches on each side of its 8 sides, resulting in 876 square feet per floor. The limestone foundation rises to grade level and supports a 2 1/2 story brick building. Now, the interior walls were of lath and plaster, and Caldwell slaves made the bricks for the house, including the ingeniously devised corner bricks that are 5-sided in order to account for the obtuse angles of the building.
Wow, that's super cool.
They also cut and dressed the huge blocks of Bowling Green white limestone that were brought from a quarry 5 miles away.
Wow, that is an undertaking.
This is in a time of no cars.
Yeah.
No trucks.
Wow. Wow.
While Octagon Hall has a few stylistic pretensions, it is elegantly conceived and crafted. Bricks are laid in Flemish bond on the front 3 sides of the house, while the remaining 5 sides are laid in a common bond pattern, which I have no idea what any of that means. The door and the second-story window directly above it are elaborately framed by multiple box cases, with the door further emphasized by flanking pilasters. There is one 6/6 sash window on each floor of the 8 sides. Again, I have no idea what that means. Mm-hmm. Now, the front and rear doors each have limestone lintels above and wooden sills below. Wrought iron grates. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
Wrought iron grates on the front and basement windows. Why is this word wrought iron grate? I want to say wrought iron gate.
Yeah.
Visitors climb 8 limestone steps to the west-facing front door and enter into a shallow entry hall with doors leading directly into the parlor to the right or the dining room to the left. Now, these 2 rooms occupy slightly over half of the main floor plan and are connected by a large door on the common wall. Behind these are rooms that were used as bedrooms before the upper floor was completed and later as a family parlor and an office. And one of the back rooms is a step stair that leads to an upper floor bedroom, which was originally closed off from the rest of the second floor rooms. These spaces were likely Caldwell's studies and a traveler's room for male overnight guests. They were very specific about it being for male overnight guests. I don't know if that was like a thing back then.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Where'd the girls sleep?
Yeah.
They Barnum?
Oh. No, I know.
Between these 2 back rooms is an abbreviated stair hall that also provided ingress and egress for the slaves to the detached summer kitchen. Fowler viewed hallways as wasteful. I'm sorry, let that soak in. That is weird. Okay. Fowler viewed hallways as wasteful. How is a hallway wasteful?
I don't know.
Man.
Super weird. So it was just like
So everybody's got to know when you ate a bad burrito?
Yeah, right?
You're going to run to the bathroom.
just
Everybody sees you
huge
clenching.
Open floor plan that everyone's just like, hey, hi.
Well, but he did allow them in the basement, with the various locked storage rooms made passageways necessary, and Caldwell followed Fowler's advice and organized the basement with a central passage, accessed from the rear of the house, and 4 rooms, one which was the winter kitchen, in which we'll later find out the Caldwell's daughter caught fire and died. Other basement rooms were used as a food storage, fuel storage, and as a workroom or quarters for Caldwell's overseers. Overseers are the people who are in charge of the slaves. Bad people.
Yeah.
Bad.
Not really,
not good on them. Not good on them. Boo them.
Not really great people at all.
Boo. Boo. We should have like a boo effect.
Oh.
We really should.
Yeah.
We're going to work on that. The upper floor follows the same plan as the floor below. The area above the entry hall was divided into closets and a small sitting area where the prevailing winds from the southwest would have cooled occupants during the warmer months. Fowler advocated for hygiene, thank God, and the many windows and interior doors of Octagon Hall allowed the inhabitants to catch breezes from any direction, which sounds amazing.
Yes.
The octagonal... I had a hard time with this word. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I don't know what it is, unfortunately. It says, where is it again? The octagonal cupola, Cupola, tweet at me. I dare you. That originally capped the house and created internal airflow was not replaced after it was destroyed in a fire at an unknown date. Directly behind the house is a brick summer kitchen with a large open hearth for cooking. A log cabin that served as the slave quarters has been built from original materials within the yard of the main house. Now, between them and the house is the original well. The well at Octagon Hall was poisoned by troops in retribution for Caldwell's staunch support of the Confederacy and his reputation for hiding and tending wounded Confederate soldiers throughout the Civil War. Several hidey holes have been found at Octagon Hall, located under the front steps, above closets, and behind kitchen cupboards.
Wow.
And given its proximity to the main road between Louisville, that's right, Louisville people, I said it right,
What's up?
and Nashville, and to the railroad, it's not surprising that both Union and Confederate troops occupied Octagon Hall and its grounds. One of John Hunt Morgan's raiders died at Octagon Hall and is buried close to the Caldwell's deceased child. The slaves were also found buried in a nearby plot, but separate plot.
Of course.
And now, the history of Octagon Hall. Now, I have to say, I thought there was going to be a lot more history on this place.
Okay.
There is, and there isn't. You'll see what I mean. There's a lot of deaths surrounded in a very short story.
Wow.
Now, as I said, construction begins in 1847. Andrew Jackson Caldwell laid out the foundation for his new family home in Simpson County, Kentucky, near Franklin, Kentucky. With a desire for distinction, his home would not be a simple structure with 4 walls like so many others, but an 8-sided edifice unique to the region. Now, construction was complete in 1859 and would soon become a landmark in the south central Kentucky area. 1862, with the fall of Forts Henry and Donelson, Confederate forces evacuated their stronghold in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and took refuge at Octagon Hall. As many as 12,000 Confederate soldiers camped on the property surrounding the home on February 13th of 1862. General Johnston, Hardee, and Breckinridge spent the night inside the home.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Wow.
Man, that's like a concert.
Yeah.
Man, it was like the original Woodstock.
I know, like I kept repeating the number after you said it. I'm like, that really is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, would you really think about it.
Wow.
It's like a football game.
Yeah.
When the Union troops moved in, they were not as welcome because Caldwell was a slave owner. The house was considered enemy territory. The Union troops took what they wanted, and the family's favorite cow, Spot, was killed, and the remains were thrown into the drinking well, contaminating it for months. That's how it was poisoned.
No.
It is also said that Confederate soldiers were hid in the house while it was being occupied by Federal troops. One Confederate soldier lost a leg due to a gunshot wound, but he was quickly helped into the attic when the Union soldiers came to the house. After the Union soldiers had left, the Confederate soldier was found dead. He had bled to death. There are rumors to be a secret tunnel that leads from the basement to the barn, and this tunnel may have also been used to hide soldiers.
Wow.
So, I mean, a really messed up comparison to make here is like, we think of the South and like the Underground Railroad for slaves.
Yeah.
This was the reverse of that. It was Underground Railroad for Confederate soldiers.
Ugh.
Crazy.
So crazy.
In 1865, following their brief occupation of the hall, Union forces would continue to harass the Caldwells, who were known to be Confederate supporters. Throughout the war, Union forces would sneak onto the grounds and attempt to catch Caldwell in the act of harboring Confederates. They never had a moment's peace, from what I read. As long as this went on, the Union soldiers were always showing up, ransacking their home, checking, stealing, taking all their stuff.
You've got to like constantly be on guard and like not. I mean, never like live a normal life, I guess.
No, never.
You know, like you don't have time to be any kind of normal during something like that. And that
Absolutely.
sounds miserable.
Absolutely. You're always on your guard. You never
Yeah.
sleep well. And they're always taking your stuff. You know, like I'm from up north, and I mean, we all live in a world where the Union won. Mm-hmm. But soldiers are soldiers, and especially back then, they took what they wanted. And I'd hate to be the women back then.
Oh my God. It's almost like piracy in a way.
It is piracy.
You know,
it is
like-
piracy.
Ugh.
The Caldwells would suffer personal tragedies as well. Their infant son, AJ, died after tumbling down the stairs and breaking his neck. Their daughter, Mary, languished before dying from her dress catching fire in the basement kitchen, burning to death. God, that sucks. Caldwell's first wife, Elizabeth, died, and his second wife, Harriet. Oh, this is such a... All right. I read this, and I actually had to... I open mouth said some things because I thought this was so messed up that I almost made it in here because I didn't catch it.
Oh God.
His second wife, his first wife, Elizabeth, died, and his second wife, Harriet, had him dug back up after his death and reburied him in Bowling Green so he would spend eternity with her rather than with Elizabeth.
Oh my.
Dude, how messed up is that?
Whoa, dude.
It's so
What?
messed up. It is so messed up.
Oh my
I couldn't believe that when I read that. Now, the family cemetery behind the house holds AJ, Mary, Elizabeth, and also an unknown body. A few yards away, surrounded by bald cypress trees, is a slave cemetery with 17 bodies. Outside the circle of trees lay 2 buried Confederate soldiers, although many soldiers likely died on the grounds. They did fight there. In 1918, Dr. Miles Williams, an osteopath from Nashville, Tennessee, purchased Octagon Hall. Now, Dr. Williams moved from Nashville and made the Octagon Hall his residence until his death in 1954. And at that time, Octagon Hall was made a rental property by his heirs. Octagon Hall remained a rental property until the Octagon Hall Foundation was formed and obtained the building in 2001. Dr. Billy D. Bird has operated the site as a nonprofit museum and local attraction, highlighting the paranormal experiences he has reported there. Currently, it is the site of the Octagon Hall Museum and Kentucky Confederate Studies Archive. It includes a library, a display of Civil War artifacts, Native American artifacts, and genealogical and historical research material.
Wow.
A slave cemetery and historic gardens are on the grounds and is dedicated to the restoration and preservation of the only 8-sided house that is in Kentucky. The Octagon Hall Foundation is furthering the efforts to save the past for the future. The historic Octagon Hall is indeed rumored to be haunted. And how could it not? You know, with war, deaths of family members living in the house, tragedy on top of tragedy, and bloodstains on the past. I looked and I couldn't find a number of the actual amount of deaths that were on the grounds. But what really matters is that people on both sides, innocent people fighting for what they believed in and what they ultimately died for on those grounds, and some will be searching for redemption for an eternity.
Wow. That's a very sad
It is.
history.
When we went into this, I remember talking to them, and I even think Julie might have said some stuff about this place, but I thought of it as more of a family, just a family house. I realized that maybe some historical members of the family died there. I didn't realize that soldiers were literally dying left and right in this place.
And it was used as part of a war, like as a base, basically.
You know, it went from what in my brain I thought maybe 5 people died here to hundreds may have died here.
Yeah.
You know, so it's no doubt that there's something going on there, right?
Well, and can I one thing you pointed out, the daughter.
Yes, Mary.
With as many paranormal things that we watch, and in all of these super old houses, a lot of them have that exact similar story, where a woman way back in the day when all they had for heat and stuff like that, young women, yes, just, I mean, their dress catches on fire and they die. And that is in so many of these places that we watch.
I mean, a lot of them take their own lives, and they're usually heartbroken. It's usually over some guy, which I think is hilarious now because, since women have been so liberated since then that when men are more likely to be broken up over women now. I find it funny how the tables have turned, but it was a very simple world where, women didn't have shit. They didn't have anything.
No.
So a woman's, and I'm not saying this is anything bad about women, but in those days, it was like all you could do to find a decent dude who wasn't going to beat you and like rape you and stuff and marry him and have a happy life because the world wouldn't let you do it on your own.
Or try to have a happy life. I mean, it was definitely not frowned upon for men to do all those things.
I mean, they encouraged men to beat their wives back then. It's nuts. It is just, I mean, I'm married. I could never imagine hitting you. It would never cross my mind. And it seems so weird to me that it was the norm at one point in history.
And I've been through physical and mental abuse relationships before, and I couldn't imagine.
Don't tell people about what I've done to you.
Oh my gosh, stop it. I couldn't imagine like living that your everyday life where everyone thinks it's okay. And like you don't have a friend being like, "Yo, are you okay?" Like,
we should have dropped this during like Female Appreciation Month or something. But there's always one of those, and I feel like there's always infant child death.
Yes,
always, and not just like stillborn death, like.
But it's always like an accident.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
like it's not like he died at birth. I mean, there's a lot of those, but. It's always like some kid falls down the stairs or something. Right. Stop letting your kids go up the stairs when they're that little.
Yes, please.
Infants don't have the mobility to walk up and down the stairs.
Well, and that shines a light towards like if you look back in like the 1970s, 1980s, like the child safety equipment compared to now. I mean, they had literally nothing like that. So
I remember riding in cars with no seatbelts. I'm old, flopping around the back seat. We didn't care. Windows up. Cigarettes are smoking. But so that's the history, and I'm sure that you're going to have something for us.
I certainly do. I wanted to set the ghost story mood with a story before another story. First, from some friends of ours that have been on our show a few episodes ago, which we already had talked about. The article from WUKTalesman.com is great, and I wanted to use it to set the scene with experiences from people who volunteer and run this intriguing place. As the last inklings of sunlight faded away on Friday, October 18th, Octagon Hall came into view. Its brick exterior reflecting nothing but the shadows of a cold night, even moonlight seemingly afraid of what lies within the hall. Quote, "It is very well known in the paranormal community. It's quite famous," said Debbie Shapiro. She is a docent, I believe is how you say that, or a volunteer and paranormal advisor of the hall with over 40 years of experience investigating the paranormal. Octagon Hall is a Civil War museum in Franklin that was built in 1958. Shapiro said, "The building has become a well-known hotspot for paranormal activity, and over 350 paranormal research teams have investigated the property." The volunteers at the hall organize novice ghost hunts that take place on Fridays and Saturdays from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. in October to give everyday people the opportunity to experience the paranormal for $50. Inside Octagon Hall, Shapiro greeted guests from within a room filled with 19th century relics and antiques, including a Confederate flag draped over the wall behind her. She explained how the night would begin before any paranormal activity was to be expected. Shapiro said, quote, "We give everybody the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts of ghost hunting, and we let the house get used to us." End quote. Early arriving hunters were allowed to explore the home, which is 2 stories tall with a basement and a closed-off tunnel system underneath. Human-sized dolls, dressed in period attire, are posed throughout the hall. On and beside historic items, such as century-old furniture and weapons recovered from Civil War soldiers. Yashina Bush, another docent at the museum, sat outside before the hunt began, a cigarette in hand, as she looked out over the dimly lit road that leads to the hall. She recalled an experience in the building, which she said could only be the result of paranormal happenings. Bush said, quote, "I got this intense feeling in the back of my throat, in the back of my mouth. I could smell it. Blood. Very clearly. To the point that I was choking on it." End quote. She said that she was cleaning in the hall's former hospital room when the feeling started, and assumed it was a nosebleed, so she tilted her head back to prevent blood from dripping. This caused the choke feeling to intensify and become unbearable. She said, quote, "I didn't care if I got blood everywhere. I threw my head forward and nothing came out." End quote. She was confused by the absence of blood and moved into a mirror room where she opened her mouth to check, only to find nothing unusual, and the feeling then disappeared. She said when she began volunteering at the hall, she was not a fully fledged skeptic, but her experiences there convinced her beyond a doubt of the existence of spirits. Bush said, quote, "I was here for about a month, and I had to question everything. The house showed me things that made me understand that I did not understand everything about the universe." End quote. When the hunt began, around 15 ghost hunters convened in the room Shapiro had been greeting from. There was a dining table in the center with chairs filling up the space to the antique-laden walls. Billy Sims, a paranormal investigator with Night Stalkers Paranormal Research, and Shapiro gave directions and warnings about engaging with the spirits that reside in the hall. Quote, "This place is no joke. It can stick with you. It can follow you home." End quote. Sims said, "The majority of the first session of ghost hunting consisted of sitting in the pitch black room while Shapiro, Sims, Bush, and another experienced ghost hunter asked the spirits in the hall various questions. They used a digital recorder to document each series of questions and listen back for responses. No responses were captured from this position. At the end of the first session, Sims began to use a device called an SB7 spirit box. He said the box switches through AM/FM radio stations at a rapid pace to allow the spirits to be heard speaking. Sims said, quote, "It's sweeping so fast that if you hear more than one word or one syllable, that's not a radio station." End quote. This segment of the session produced several audible responses, which Shapiro said came from the ghosts in the hall. At one point during the questioning, she asked, quote, "How many spirits are in the room with us right now?" End quote. Moments later, a voice came through answering, 7, before seemingly changing its answer to 8 almost immediately. Shapiro then thanked what she said was a ghost for its response, and the same voice clearly replied, "You're welcome." Once this session ended, the group of novice ghost hunters were split in two. One group headed upstairs in the hall, while the other exited to the cemeteries behind the home. The Caldwell family cemetery is a small stone wall surrounding the gravestones of Andrew Caldwell's wife and daughter. Shapiro said, quote, "There are mass graves of soldiers on the property as well. There's so much death that has happened here," end quote. Sims led the cemetery group down a path of flattened brush through a small, thickly wooded patch until he stopped at a clearing with small stones jutting from the ground haphazardly. These stones, he said, are grave markers for the slaves who died working at this plantation. He said this tucked away clearing, several dozen yards from the house, is definitely the slave cemetery. The cemeteries, while ominous as homes of the dead, gave no signs of paranormal activity, though. But they are usually hotspots. Shapiro said Octagon Hall's paranormal activity levels can be hit or miss depending on the mood of the spirits. However, Sims said there is one surefire way to get at least a sample of paranormal presence at the hall. He said, quote, "Just listen to the house. She will speak to you at some point. I promise you," end quote.
I feel the insatiable need to say thank you because you looked right at me when you said you're welcome.
I can't help it. When I add all the little words in there, especially from spirit boxes, I'm like, yep.
I just at the moment I was like, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was pretty cool. Sorry, man.
I know, and that was just like a little snippet from, a ghost hunting.
How many ghosts were gonna show up into that? We're gonna show up to that.
I know, right? They were like, 7. Just kidding. It's 8.
They would have asked again. It'd be like 9, 10, 11, 12.
They're coming.
13.
Oh my God. 13 ghosts.
Yeah. Well, guess stay away from the jackal.
Yeah, right. So one fun fact I found as I was on an interview on JoBlo.com with none other than Nick Groff himself.
The man. Love Nick.
In November 2019, Nick visited Octagon Hall for a series he was putting together called Nick Groff Investigates.
See, I was very surprised about this because I love Nick, and I've watched a lot of Nick Groff stuff even after Ghost Hunter or Ghost Adventures, and I've never heard of Octagon Hall until RKB, and I'm very surprised because he's got a tie to it that I've never heard of it.
Well, and I don't think that the Nick Groff Investigates series that he's doing is like a super televised thing.
It's not.
I honestly think it may be a YouTube thing, but I could be wrong.
Well, then I have to find it.
I know.
Because I want to see it.
So Nick Groff Investigates, and this is what he had to say about his experience at, quote, "one of the most amazing locations I've ever been to in my life," end quote. When asked about his experience, Nick said, quote, "One of my favorite locations to investigate. So many different stories and interesting encounters with the paranormal. Our first hour on the property, we experienced a bizarre UFO hovering above Octagon Hall Museum. What appeared to be a white transparent sphere came out of nowhere and moved quickly in hyper-speed motion. I've never seen an object move this fast in different directions rapidly. It was amazing. My cousin Justin and our interviewee both witnessed the flying object too. After it vanished into thin air, we heard the story of a pilot who chased a UFO nearby and randomly crashed and died. There's also been a lot of sightings of cryptids and bizarre creatures around the property. Apparitions, ghosts, and creepy phenomena. The most epic part about this location was the stories I heard about the time slipping into our reality. It was crazy. One story was about a group of people who saw a ghost train behind the location on the tracks that looked like it was from a different period in time. It was so realistic with people moving on the train inside. In fact, one of the witnesses who worked for the railway contacted the station and asked why that train was running on the tracks. They responded with, "Trains are not running on the tracks right now." The people inside the train were dressed in 50s era clothing. The stories and encounters are endless. The history is incredible. I now understand why a Mason would build on this property. The energy is fascinating. So much to learn and experience. I documented unexplainable things that made me question more about our reality. I definitely will be back to explore more. End quote.
So Nick Groff gives it the stamp of approval.
The seal of approval.
That's impressive.
He
I
does.
want to find
I
that.
know. It was super cool. I didn't see any of the video, but it was more for, it was on YouTube.
Better not watch that without me.
No, it was just like a clip of him like introducing where he was.
Okay.
And like that he was going to be doing an episode there. It was like a minute and a half long. But that's how I figured out like when it was and what the place was called, because it didn't say it in the article.
I have to check that out.
Yeah, we definitely will.
I remember hearing about his series that he put out, but I think we looked for it and we couldn't find it originally.
I think though maybe we were just like looking on the network
Maybe.
things, and
I don't
maybe
remember.
we just kind of have to broaden our search.
Maybe. But I definitely want to find it. And at
Yes.
the end of this episode, I'm actually going to have another paragraph I want to read about Octagon Hall, because it was stuff I wanted to put in, but I wasn't sure if you would have it, and I don't think you're going to. So I'm going to just throw it in at the end.
Well, I am finishing off with RKB's story.
What's up, guys?
I know.
Hey, boys.
I know. I'm super excited. I was so glad they wrote in. Thank you guys so much. And I am so excited to tell your story.
Absolutely. And thanks for writing it in, actually. Yeah. Appreciate that. We're going big on the write-in this week.
If our listeners remember when we did our interview with Damien and Josh from RKB Paranormal, you will recall them talking about this exact place. We were so enthralled with their brief talk about their time there, we just had to learn more. As soon as we finished our interview with them, it says but it's them.
Stupid talk to text.
I know. We immediately went and found their video of this experience and that they shared with us. So naturally, when we decided to do an episode on this place, we reached out and they wrote in their full story for us to share. This is the story of RKB Paranormal's investigation of Octagon Hall. Octagon Hall is a beast of a location. There are so many layers to this building and property. It is a highly active location, and this was our second official investigation after we started our team, and we didn't leave disappointed. But we also weren't expecting some of the things that occurred the night we went. We went in August of 2020. It was a public event, so there were about 10 more people there besides us. But we got to do our own thing since we were a team. While in the nursery, we were getting some good flashlight interaction. The spirit we were in contact with was turning the flashlight on and off, on command. We began asking yes or no questions. For yes, we asked the spirits to turn on and off once. For no, on and off twice. Eventually, as the questioning went on, we found out we were interacting with a child slave spirit. It was at that point we began to hear growling coming from the nearby closet. We heard it 3 or 4 times. When we went down to the basement the first time, it had a very heavy, hard to breathe feeling down there. Kelly had seen a white light a couple of times that we couldn't explain or figure out where it was coming from. Josh saw a shadow figure down there. Kelly and I went back down a few minutes later while the others explored the cemetery. When we got down there, it was way hotter than it was just a few minutes prior. As I was shining my flashlight around, I shined it into one of the rooms, and I saw a shadow hand. It had more fingers than an actual hand, poking through the opening of the door and doorframe. We went back to the nursery and heard the growling again. Nothing else occurred in there the second time other than the growling. Josh and I then climbed up into the attic. It was extremely heavy and very hard to breathe up there. I saw a shadow in one of the corners, and we both heard a moaning or heavy breathing coming from the same corner. After the attic, we all ventured back down to the basement. And again, the atmosphere had completely changed, and it was cold down there this time. Using our dowsing rods in the basement library, we were getting a lot of intelligent responses with both the rods and the spikes on the EMF detector. At one point, it was asked if whoever was there, if they liked the ladies being down there, and it answered no. Kelly and Angel left after that and went back upstairs. Back in the nursery, Angel and Kelly both said the atmosphere had changed once again, and it was there a heavy feeling was in the air. They were joined by another lady that was there for the event. Angel was using the dowsing rods. After a few questions, the other lady randomly brought up a story about a male being a child molester. After that, the activity amped up big time. That lady's camera stopped working. They heard the growling again, and it was even louder than the previous times. They had asked if they wanted to hurt Kelly, and it said yes. And Kelly immediately jumped up and went downstairs and outside. Thinking maybe they had just spooked themselves, I convinced the ladies to go back up there, and I joined them, along with a gentleman who was one of the event organizers. Kelly did not want to go back in, but she did. The gentleman was using his rods and asking questions, asking if they liked the females being in there, and it said no. He responded by saying times are different nowadays, and females are treated differently, and that the spirit wasn't going to hurt the ladies. He asked if the spirit liked being told that, and it responded no. He asked if the spirit wanted the females to leave, and it responded yes. And the gentleman using the rods said, well, they will leave when they are ready to leave. This guy was pretty much provoking whatever was in there. After that, Angel felt a sharp pain in her stomach, and Kelly felt a sharp pain between her shoulder blades. When they said that, the gentleman told them to leave immediately. They ran out, and once outside, they both broke down crying. Angel couldn't breathe. Both were in extreme pain. The lady who oversaw the hall then, who has 40 years of experience in the field of the paranormal, came out and burned sage around them and had them hold a protection stone while she did it, and rubbed oil on their foreheads in the form of a cross, and told the spirit to leave them alone, and they were not allowed to follow them home, and it was not allowed to leave the property. When she finished up, and she told us we needed to leave immediately, and for us to say out loud that the spirit was not welcome with us and could not come along, and it had to stay there. And she told us once we left that something would try to bring us back. Once we were on the road, the GPS kept rerouting us back to the Octagon. It was a night none of us will forget.
It's awesome.
It was so cool.
Man, I've actually, I've kind of heard, I've never heard the whole story. I've heard bits and pieces because they do like, Damien will show up in the Wednesday Spaces sometimes when we do the paranormal oddities.
Yeah.
And I've heard bits and pieces of the story. And I actually remember him telling me about there was somebody there provoking. And they were all not very happy about that.
Could you imagine just being in there and you're like, it's answering questions
Very correctly, too.
super correctly about not liking the females, and you're just like,
come on.
hey, what's that ghost? Like, what?
What kind of old school man doesn't want ladies around? No, it's a great story. Thanks, guys.
Super
We
good.
appreciate
Thank you
that. That was a really good
so
one.
much.
And word on the street is, we might get to see or hear some more about them going to Octagon Hall one day.
Oh, yay.
I don't know. I'm not saying it. I don't know the business, but maybe. But I mean, it's impressive. I mean, it's whenever you can have something directly answer stuff in such an intelligent way, it's always very impressive.
Yeah.
So it's super cool.
Absolutely.
Super duper.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much again for writing that in.
Yes. But
And I believe you have something
Yes.
else.
I wanted to put this in my original story, but because you do more of the modern day stuff, I wasn't really sure. I didn't want to step on your toes. So, but I kind of remembered where it was in case you didn't.
Okay.
And I wanted to read some stuff that come from the website roadtrippers.com, which I shouted out in the beginning of my portion. And it's just some accounts of paranormal stuff.
Ooh,
and it says,
awesome.
In the 1860s, it is said that a young girl burned to death in the basement kitchen, which we know is the daughter. Mm-hmm. And local stories tell that during a 2003 Halloween ghost tour, the fireplace kettle, which hangs from a movable arm, but it's too heavy to move easily, swung out into the room. Also, during a Civil War reenactment, when some actors stayed the night at the house, they heard footsteps and opening and closing doors throughout the night. Next morning, they found a body-shaped imprint in the feather bed in an upstairs bedroom, although no one had slept there.
Oh, no.
A few days later, a woman was alone cleaning and saw that the feather bed looked as if someone had been laying in it. So she fluffed it, and that was it. When she returned, though, shortly after, the imprint was in the bed again. She had not heard about the imprint earlier. I mean, she'd never heard about it. You know? Other phenomena experienced here include the unexplained scent in the parlor of flowers, which quickly turns to decayed meat.
Ooh.
This happened on December 15th of 2003. Folks speculate that this is because it was the anniversary of the original owner, Andrew Jackson Caldwell's death. And his body was displayed in the parlor.
Oh, wow.
Common practice at the time.
Wow.
Gross.
Yeah.
Ghost hunters here have collected several examples of electronic voice phenomena, also known as EVP, as well as other communications. So there's an abundance of
Accounts and
I mean, there's tons
things
of stories from
yeah.
this place. I mean, we know people who've had them. So
Wow.
the Octagon Hall, that's the jam right there. I would love to go there and visit.
So cool.
I'd like to see this oddly shaped house, honestly. Even if it wasn't haunted, I'd want to see
Even just looking up doing the research for this and seeing a few pictures of this place, it looks so cool.
Yeah, it does. It's different. It's very different.
I really, really like it. And I didn't think I would just because.
Let's move in.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, though.
Have to keep the girls out of the kitchen area.
Yeah, right.
I don't want them to burn to death.
Ugh. So, is it time?
I don't know. Is it? Oh, wait. No, it's not quite time yet because I'm a slacker.
Oh, okay.
But it could be time in just a second.
In just a second? Okay.
All right, you ready? Now it can be time.
Okay. Here we go.
Well, I don't know whether, Stephen. Is it real? What do you think, Megan? What do you think after all of this? All these accounts, honestly, and stories, and Nick Groff?
You know, for not knowing anything about this place and just hearing it from an investigation team that we randomly sat down and talked with and had a great interview. And in doing my research, I didn't know any of the history before we sat down at this table until you read that to me. And I think with everything combined, I really do think that it's haunted. I mean, there is so much death and tragedy. Now it's not all documented and recorded and all that. But that was so many soldiers to have there, and it being a battleground. And I just think that applies with, you know, you can't walk anywhere in the continent and not walk over dead bodies, you know? So
They're everywhere.
they are. They really, truly are.
And they out here killing people.
I do. I do. Yes, absolutely. What about you?
That's a good question, Megan.
And what is your answer, Stephen?
Well, that's a good question, Megan. I'm gonna say possibly, but leaning more towards yes. And the only reason is because like I'm so used to the popular places that I know,
Yeah.
and they're just being either a mountain of evidence or a mountain of things pointing towards fakery. Mm-hmm. And this place isn't like that. There is a mountain of evidence. It's just that I don't have a lot of history with learning about it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it'd be hard to say it's not. There's so much evidence. I mean, I thought we were going to go into this not being able to find anything on the internet about it, and I was way wrong.
Yeah.
I was able to find lots of stuff. I mean, it was mostly people writing articles about their trip there and their experiences and stuff. So, I cover history, so it doesn't really do me any good. But there's a lot of accounts of people seeing, hearing, smelling, catching EVPs. Mm-hmm. There's so much. Yeah, you know what? Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think it's a pretty solid chance this place has something going on. I mean, there was basically the Civil War came to its front door.
Yeah, I
and
know.
They were stashing bleeding soldiers in the walls, and we're not even touching on. They had slaves. Slaves didn't live good lives. They were not treated well. So, I mean, there's also that. Yeah, Octagon Hall. Man, what an awesome place.
Super awesome place.
So cool.
So cool. And if anybody wants to, just go check out pictures of this place. I mean, it just looks...
And go support RKB. Go watch their videos.
And cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Check them out. I also want to do kind of like an end of the show kind of shout out.
Okay.
I'm going to give Lullaby the Fear podcast another shout out, because if you listen to this show and you'd like to hear our sexy voices again, if you go over to her show and you listen to her 2-parter on the Anthill Kids.
Yes.
It's me and Megan's voice in that show.
It sure is.
We gave our voice acting debut.
I know. And we had so much fun doing that.
It was super cool.
So, hey, Ashley. Hey, girl. Hey.
Ate her, bud. That's some Timmy's. But yeah, so that's us on there. If you'd like to support us and her, that'd be great.
Yes.
So go check that out. And I know we have really been extending our list of stuff we want to do coming up, and I'm pretty excited because
me too.
It's growing, but it's growing with stuff that is, I think people are going to learn along with us. So I'm super excited. We even have one local to us.
Yes.
Literally local, right down the road.
Yep.
So I'm
super excited for that.
Pretty stoked about that one.
Yes.
So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. And remember to rate and review the show. It helps us out. It helps get us noticed. We'd like to pick up a sponsor or two, so maybe we can do some stuff.
Do the follows, do the liking.
Yeah, it only takes you a couple minutes. You go on there and you don't have to say anything, or you could say nice things, or you don't have to say nice things. Whatever, just
whatever
5
you
stars.
want to say. That's fine.
I don't care. But where can they reach us?
We are on Instagram at @forthebooze_podcast. We are on Facebook at For the Booze.
We're on Twitter at For the Booze, and on. Did you say Facebook?
I did.
Okay, and YouTube, for some ungodly reason, you want to watch 10, 15-minute second clips of each episode. Whatever, more power to you.
And of course, again, if you want to write in a story or have a listener suggestion, and again, it doesn't have to be a spooky story. I mean, Mr. Ferrari sends in stuff from being a cop, super cool, just interesting, intriguing stuff. We just want to know and hear all the things.
Absolutely.
So write us in at forthebooze12@gmail.com or on any other social media platform.
Or even if you just want to say hi to us, you can email us.
Yes. We'll be hi.
But yeah, we'd like to thank all you. I mean, we've had a pretty steady listener base
we have.
For a while. So all y'all listening out there, man, we appreciate you guys.
You're the best.
You make it fun to do.
Yes.
So
y'all are awesome.
It'll be a long time before you get rid of us. Make sure you keep listening. And don't forget, we're also on the Good Pods, and literally anywhere you can find a podcast in other countries as well. And we got some listeners out in Australia too. So shout out down under. I will
Don't do it.
Murder that accent. But I think this is about it.
I think that wraps it up.
So I guess this is where we're gonna kind of take it out for the week, and we'll be back with another spooky oogie one next week. And
bye.